called also Sambhu. He is self-born. He is the Lord of all creatures, and the origin of the past, the future, and the present. He is Yoga and the Lord of Yoga. He is called Sarva, and is the Lord of all the worlds. He is superior to everything, the foremost of everything in the universe, and the highest of all. He is called also Paramastin, the ordainer of the three worlds. He is the sole refuge of the three worlds. Incapable of being vanquished, he is the protector of the universe, and abode, the necessity of birth, decay, and death. The soul of knowledge, incapable of being compassed by knowledge, and the highest of all knowledge. He is unknowable. Through grace, he giveth unto his worshippers the boons they desire. That Lord hath for his companions celestial beings of diverse forms, some of whom are dwarfs, some having matted locks, some with bald heads, some with short necks, some with large stomachs, some with huge bodies, some possessed of great strength, and some of long ears. All of them, O Patha, have deformed faces and mouths and legs and strange attires. That supreme deity, called Mahadeva, is worshipped by followers that are even such. Even that Shiva, O Son, endues with such energy, proceedeth through kindness, in advance of thee. In that fierce battle, O Patha, making the very hair stand on end, who else, O Arjuna, than the divine Mahabharata, that foremost of all bowmen, that deity of divine form, could even in imagination venture to vanquish that force which was protected by those great smiters and bowmen, viz., Aswatthama and Kana and Kripa. None can venture to stay before the warrior that hath Mahabharata walking before him. There is no being in the three worlds that is equal to him. At the very scent of the enraged Mahadeva, foes in battle tremble and become senseless and fall in large numbers. For this, the gods in heaven adore and bow to him. Those men in this world and those other men of pious conduct, that devoutly worship the boon-giving, divine, and auspicious Rudra, obtain happiness here and attain to the highest state hereafter. O son of Kunti, bow down unto him that is peace, unto him, called Rudra of blue throat, exceedingly subtle, and of great effulgence, unto him called Kapardin, him that is terrible, him that of tawny eyes, him that is boon-giving, unto that great ordainer, of red locks and righteous conduct, unto him that always does auspicious acts, unto him that is an object of desire, him that is of the tawny eyes, him that is called Stanu, him that is called Purusha, unto him that is of tawny hair, him that is bold, him that is exceedingly subtle and of great effulgence, unto him that is the giver of light, him that is the embodiment of all sacred waters, him that is the God of gods, and him that is endued with great impetuosity, unto him that is of manifest form, him that is called Sarva, him that is of agreeable attire, unto him that has an excellent headgear, him that is of handsome face, him that has the mountains for his habitation, him that is peace, him that is the protector, him that has barks of trees for his attire, him whose arms are decked with ornaments of gold, him who is fierce, him that is the Lord of all the points of the compass, him that is the Lord of the clouds and of all created beings, him that is the Lord of all trees and of all kine, him that has his body shrouded with trees, him who is the celestial generalissimo, him who inspires all thought, him who has the sacrificial ladle in his hand, him who is blazing, him who wields the bow, him who is Rama's self, him who has diverse forms, him who is the Lord of the universe, him who had the manja grass for his attire, him who has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 arms, and 1,000 legs. O son of Kunti, seek the protection of that boon-giving Lord of the universe, the Lord of that God of 3 eyes, that destroyer of Daksha's sacrifice, that guardian of all created things, that being who is always cheerful, that protector of all beings, that God of unfading glory, that one with matted locks, that mover of all superior beings, that one whose navel is like that of a bull and who hath the bull for his symbol, that one who is proud like the bull, who is the Lord of bulls, who is represented by the horns of the bull, and who is the bull of bulls, that one who hath the image of the bull on his banner, who is liberal to all righteous persons, who can be approached by yoga only, and whose eyes are like those of a bull, who owneth very superior weapons, who hath Vishnu himself for his arrow, who is the embodiment of righteousness, and who is called Mahabharata, who is of vast stomach and vast body, who hath the leopard's skin for his seat, who is the Lord of the worlds, who is devoted to Brahma and who loveth Brahmanas, who is armed with trident, who is boon-giving, who wieldeth the sword and the shield, and who is highly auspicious, who wieldeth the bow called Pinnaker, who is divested of the battle axe, 273, and who is the protector and Lord of the universe. I place myself in the hands of that divine Lord, that grantor of protection, that God attired in deerskins. Salutations to that Lord of the celestials who hath Vajravana for his friend. Salutations ever to him of excellent vows, to him who hath excellent bowmen for his companions, to him who himself wieldeth the bow, to that God with whom the bow is a favourite weapon, who is himself the shaft impelled by the bow, who is the bowstring and the bow, and the preceptor teaching the use of the bow. Salutations to the God whose weapons are fierce, and who is the foremost of all the gods. Salutations to him of diverse forms, to him who hath many bowmen around him. Salutations ever to him who is called Stanu and who has a large number of excellent bowmen for his companions. Salutations to him who destroyed the triple city. Salutations to him who slew the Asura, Bhaga. Salutations to him who is the Lord of trees and of men. Salutations to him who is the Lord of the celestial mothers, and of those tribes of spirits known by the name of Ganas. Salutations ever to him who is the Lord of kine and of sacrifices. Salutations ever to him who is the Lord of the waters and the Lord of the gods, who is the destroyer of Surya's teeth, who is of 3 eyes, who is the grantor of boons, who is called Hara, who is blue-throated, and who is of golden locks. I will now tell thee, according to my knowledge and as I have heard of them, all the divine deeds of Mahadeva of supreme wisdom. If Mahadeva becomes angry, neither gods, nor Asuras, Gandharvas, nor Rakshasas, even if they hide themselves in deep oceans, can have peace. In the days of yore, Daksha, for performing a sacrifice, had collected the necessary articles. Mahadeva destroyed that sacrifice in wrath. Indeed, he became very stern on that occasion. Shooting an arrow from his bow, he uttered terrible roars. The celestials then became filled with anxiety and fright. Indeed, when Mahadeva became angry and the sacrifice, in its embodied form, fled away, the gods became exceedingly frightened at the twang of Mahadeva's bow and the sound of his palms. The gods and Asuras all fell down and submitted to Mahadeva. All the waters swelled up in agitations and the earth trembled. The mountains split, and all the points of the compass and the nagas became stupefied. The universe, enveloped in a thick darkness, could no longer be seen. The splendor of all luminaries, with the sun, was destroyed. The rishis, filled with fear, became agitated, and desirous of their own good as also of all creatures, performed propitiatory rites. Surya was then eating the principal oblation. Smilingly Sankara approached him and tore out his teeth. The gods then, humbling themselves to him, fled away, trembling. Once more, Mahadeva aimed at the gods a shower of blazing and keen arrows resembling flames of fire mixed with smoke, or clouds with lightning. Beholding that arrowy shower, all the gods bowing down unto Mahabharata, assigned to Rudra a substantial share in sacrifices. In fright, the gods, O Prince, sought his protection. His wrath being dispelled, the great god then restored the sacrifice. The gods that had fled away came back. Indeed, they are to this day afraid of Mahabharata. Formerly, the valiant Asuras had, in heaven, 3 cities. Each of those cities was excellent and large. One was made of iron, another of silver, and the third of gold. The golden city belonged to Kamalukshaw, the silver city to Tarukakshaw, and the third, made of iron, had Vijayanmalan for its lord. With all his weapons, Maghavat, Indra, was unable to make any impression on those cities. Afflicted by the Asuras, all the gods sought the protection of Rudra. Approaching him, all the gods with Vasava at their head, said, "These terrible dwellers of the triple city have received boons from Brahma. Filled with pride in consequence of those boons, they are greatly afflicting the universe. O Lord of the gods, none, save thee, is competent to slay them. Therefore, O Mahadeva, slay these enemies of the gods. O Rudra, creatures slain in every sacrifice shall then be thine." Thus addressed by the gods, Mahadeva thus accepted their request, moved by the desire of benefiting them, and said, "I will overthrow these Asuras." And Hara made the 2 mountains, viz., Gandhamadana and Vindhya, the 2 poles of his car. And Sankara made the earth with her oceans and forests his battle car. And the 3-eyed deity made that prince of snakes, viz., Seshaw, the Ikshaw, of that car. And that god of gods, the wielder of Pinaka, made the moon and the sun the 2 wheels of that vehicle. And the triple-eyed lord made Alapatara and Pushpadanta, the 2 pins of the yoke. And the valiant Mahadeva made the Mala mountains the yoke, and the great Takshaka the string for tying the yoke to the poles, and the creatures about him the traces of the steed. And Mahabharata made the 4 Vedas his 4 steeds. And that lord of the 3 worlds made the supplementary Vedas the bridle bits. And Mahadeva made Gayatri and Savitri the reins, the syllable Om the whip, and Brahma the driver. And making the Mandara mountains the bow, Vasuki the bowstring, Vishnu his excellent shaft, Agni the arrowhead, and Vayu the 2 wings of that shafts, Yama the feathers in its tail, Lightning the whetting stone, and Mru the standard, Shiva, riding on that excellent car which was composed of all the celestial forces, proceeded for the destruction of the triple city. Indeed, Sthanu, that foremost of Smita, that destroyer of Asuras, that handsome warrior of immeasurable prowess, adored by the celestials, O Patha, and by rishis possessing wealth of asceticism, caused an excellent and unrivaled ray called after his own name, and stood immovable for 1,000 years. When, however, the 3 cities came together in the firmament, the Lord Mahadeva pierced them with that terrible shaft of his, consisting of 3 knots. The Danavas were unable to gaze at that shafts inspired with Yuga fire and composed of Vishnu and Soma. While the triple city commenced to burn, the goddess Parvati repaired thither to behold the sight. She had then on her lap a child having a bald head with 5 clumps of hair on it. The goddess asked the deities as to who that child was. Sakra, through ill-feeling, endeavored to strike that child with his thunderbolt. The divine Lord Mahadeva, for the child was none other, smiling, quickly paralyzed the arm of the enraged Sakra. Then God Sakra, with his arm paralyzed accompanied by all the celestials, speedily repaired to the Lord Brahma of unfading glory. Bowing unto him with their heads, they addressed Brahma with joined hands and said, "Some wonderful creature, O Brahma, lying on the lap of Parvati, in the form of a child, was beheld by us but not saluted. We have all been vanquished by him. We, therefore, desire to ask thee as to who he may be. Indeed, that boy, without fighting, hath with the greatest ease vanquished us all with Purandara at our head." Hearing these words of theirs, Brahma, that foremost of all persons, acquainted with Brahma, reflected for a moment and understood that boy of immeasurable energy to be none else than the divine Sambhu. Addressing then those foremost of celestials with Sakra at their head, Brahma said, That child is the divine Hara, the Lord of the entire mobile and immobile universe. There is nothing superior to Mahabharata. That being of immeasurable splendor who was beheld by you all with him, that divine Lord, had assumed the form of a child for Amma's sake. Let us all go unto him. That divine and illustrious one is the supreme Lord of the world. Ye gods, ye could not recognize that Master of the universe. Then all the gods with the grandsire repaired to that child, endued with the effulgence of the morning sun. Beholding Mahabharata, and knowing that he was the supreme being, the grandsire Brahma thus adored him. Thou art sacrifice, O Lord, thou art the stay and refuge of the universe. Thou art Bhava, thou art Mahadeva, thou art the abode of all things, and thou art the highest refuge. This whole universe with its mobile and immobile creatures is pervaded by thee. O Holy One, O Lord of the past and the future, O Lord of the world, O Protector of the universe, let Sakra, afflicted with thy wrath, have thy grace. Vyasa continued. Hearing these words of the lotus-born Brahma, Mahabharata became gratified. Desirous of extending his grace, he laughed aloud. The celestials then gratified, with praise, both the man Rudra. The arm of the thunder-wielding Sakra regot its natural state. That foremost one of all the gods, that destroyer of Daksha's sacrifice, that divine lord having the bull for his sign, became gratified with the gods. He is Rudra, he is Shiva, he is Agni, he is everything, and he hath knowledge of everything. He is Indra, he is the wind, he is the twin Aswins, and he is the lightning. He is Bhava, he is Parjanya, he is Mahadeva, he is sinless. He is the moon, he is Isana, he is Surya, he is Varuna. He is Kala, he is Andaka, he is Mritu, he is Yama. 274 He is the day, and he is the night. He is the fortnight, he is the month, he is the seasons. He is the morning and evening twilights, he is the year. He is Datri, he is Vitri, he is the soul of the universe, and he is the Da of all acts in the universe. Though himself without body, it is he who is the embodied celestial. Endued with great splendor, he is adored and praised by all the gods. He is one, he is many, he is 100 and 1,000. Brahmanas versed in the Vedas say that he hath two forms. These are the terrible and the auspicious. These two forms, again, are multifarious. His auspicious forms are water, light, and the moon. Whatever is highly mysterious in the several branches of the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in the Puranas, and in those sciences that deal with the soul, is that God, viz. Mahabharata. Mahadeva is even such. That God is, again, without birth. All the attributes of that God are not capable of being enumerated by me, even if, O son of Pandu, I were to recite them continually for 1,000 years. Even unto those that are afflicted by all the evil planets, even unto those that are stained with every sin, that great protector, if they seek him, becomes gratified with them and granteth them salvation. He granteth and taketh away life and health and prosperity and wealth and divers kinds of objects of desire. The prosperity is his that is seen in Indra and other gods. He is ever engaged in the good and evil of men in this world. In consequence of his supremacy, he can always obtain whatever objects he desires. He is called Mahabharata and is the lord of even the supreme ones. In many forms of many kinds he pervadeth the universe. The mouth which that God has is in the ocean. It is well known that mouth, assuming the form of a mare's head, drinketh the sacrificial libation in the shape of water. This God always dwelleth in crematoriums. Men worship that supreme Lord in that place where none but the courageous can go. Many are the blazing and terrible forms of this God that men speak of and worship in the world. Many also are the names, of truthful import, of this deity in all the worlds. Those names are founded upon his supremacy, his omnipotence, and his acts. In the Vedas, the excellent hymn called Satorudraya hath been sung in honor of that great God called the Infinite Rudra. That God is the Lord of all wishes that are human and heavenly. He is omnipotent, and he is the Supreme Master. Indeed, that God pervadeth the vast universe. The Brahmanas and the Munis describe him as the firstborn of all creatures. He is the first of all the gods. From his mouth was born Vayu, the wind. And since he always protecteth the creatures of the universe, and sporteth with them, and since also he is the Lord of all creatures, therefore is he called Pasupati. And since his phallic emblem is always supposed to be in the observance of the vow of Brahmacharya, and since he always gladdened the world, therefore he is called Mahabharata. The Rishis, the gods, the Gandharvas, and Apsaras always worship his phallic emblem, which is supposed to stand upright. That worship maketh Mahabharata glad. Indeed, Sankara, at such worship, becomes happy, pleased, and highly glad. And since with respect to the past, the future, and the present, that God has many forms, he is, on that account, called Vairupa, many-formed. Possessed of one eye he blazeth forth in effulgence, or he may be regarded to have many eyes on every side of his body. And since he possesseth the worlds, he is for that reason called Sava. And since his form is like that of smoke, he is for that reason called Turjyati. And since those deities, viz., the Viswadivyas, are in him, he is for that reason called Viswarupa. And since three goddesses adore and have recourse to that Lord of the universe, viz., firmament, water and earth, he is for that reason called Triambaka. And since he always increaseth all kinds of wealth and wisheth the good of mankind in all their acts, he is for that reason called Shiva. He possesseth 1,000 eyes, or 10,000 eyes, and hath them on all sides. And since he protecteth this vast universe, he is for that reason called Mahadeva. And since he is great and ancient and is the source of life and of its continuance, and since his phallic emblem is everlasting, he is for that reason called Stanu. And since the solar and the lunar rays of light that appear in the world are spoken of as the hair on the three-eyed one, he is for that reason called Vyamakisa. And since, afflicting Brahma and Indra and Varuna and Yama and Kuvara, he destroyeth them ultimately, he is for that reason called Hara. And since he is the past, the future, and the present, and, in fact, everything in the universe, and since he is the origin of the past, the future, and the present, he is for that reason called Bhava. The word Kapi is said to mean supreme, and Vrisha is said to mean righteousness. The illustrious God of gods, therefore, is called Vrishakapi. And since Mahabharata by means of his 2 eyes closed, in meditation, created through sheer force of will a 3rd eye on his forehead, he is for that reason called the 3-eyed. Whatever of unsoundness there is in the bodies of living creatures, and whatever of soundness there is in them, represent that God. He is the wind, the vital airs called prana, apana, and the others, in the bodies of all creatures, including even those that are diseased. He who adoreth any image of the phallic emblem of that high-souled God, always obtaineth great prosperity by that act. Downwards fiery, and half the body, that is auspiciousness, is the moon. His auspiciousness is the moon. So also half his soul is fire and half the moon. His auspicious form, full of energy, is more blazing than the forms of the gods. Among men, his blazing and terrible form is called fire. With that auspicious form he practiseth Brahmacharya. With that other terrible form he as Supreme Lord devoureth everything. And since he burneth, since he is fierce, since he is endued with great prowess, and since he devoureth flesh and blood and marrow, he is for this called Rudra. Even such is the deity called Mahadeva, armed with Pinaka, who, O Patha, was seen by thee engaged in slaying thy foes in advance of thy car. After thou hadst vowed to slay the ruler of the Centaurs, O sinless one, Krishna showed thee this god, in thy dream, sitting on the top of that foremost of mountains. This illustrious god proceedeth in advance of thee in battle. It is he who gave thee those weapons with which thou didst slay the Danavas. The hymn approved of the Vedas, and called Satarudraya, in honor of that god of gods, that excellent, famous, life-enhancing, and sacred hymn, has now, O Partha, been explained to thee. This hymn of 4 divisions, capable of accomplishing every object, is sacred, destructive of all sins, and competent to drive away all stains and to kill all sorrows and all fears. The man that always listens to this succeeds in vanquishing all his foes and is highly respected in the region of Rudra. The person who always attentively reads or listens to the recitation of this excellent and auspicious account, appertaining to battle, of the illustrious deity, and he worships with devotion that illustrious Lord of the universe, obtaineth all the objects of desire, in consequence of the three-eyed God being gratified with him. Go and fight, O son of Kunti. Defeat is not for thee, that hast Janardana on thy side for thy adviser and protector. Sanjaya said, having addressed Arjuna in these words, the son of Parasara, O chief of the Bharatas, went away to the place he had come from, O chastiser of foes. Section CI. Sanjaya said, having battled fiercely for 5 days, O king, the Brahmana, Drona, endued with great strength, fell and repaired to the region of Brahma. The fruits that arise from a study of the Vedas arise from a study of this Parva also. The great achievements of brave Kshatriyas have been described here. He who readeth or listeneth to the recitation of this Parva every day is freed from heinous sins and the most atrocious acts of his life. Brahmanas may always obtain health from the fruits of sacrifices. From this, Kshatriyas may obtain victory in fierce battle. The other orders, Vaisyas and Sudras, may obtain desirable sons and grandsons and all objects of desire. The end of Drona Parva. Footnotes. 1. Return. Literally, like an oration teeming with unrefined expressions. 2. Return. That is, deprived of robes and ornaments because of her widowhood. 3. Return. A saraba is a fabulous animal of 8 legs supposed to be stronger than the lion. 4. Return. The sense seems to be that when such an one hath been slain, what is there on earth that is not subject to destruction? Ye should, therefore, grieve for your wealth, children, etc., as things already gone. 5. Return. There is a slight difference of reading in this sloka as it occurs in the Bombay text. The sense seems to be that since everything is destined to die, why should I fear to do my duty? 6. Return. The last line is read incorrectly, I think, in the Bombay text. 7. Return. The second fine of 12 is read incorrectly in the Bengal text. Instead of Tethapi, the true reading, as in the Bombay edition, is Tavapi. 8. Return. Kula Samananajnana, that is, knowledge of Kula, as also of Samanana, which latter, as Nilakanthu explains, means the body. A knowledge of the body, of vital and other limbs, was possessed by every accomplished warrior who wanted to smite effectually. 9. Return. That is, who will feel it humiliating for him to walk behind Drona. 10. Return. A substantial difference of reading occurs here between the Bengal and the Bombay texts. Both have defects of their own. It seems to me that Drona, as leader, proceeded in the van. Karna, when described as proceeding at the head of all bowmen, must be taken marching at the head of the whole rear guard. In the case, his position would be immediately behind Drona's. 11. Return. Lit. Placed army to their right, that is, these birds wheeled to the left of thy host, which is an evil omen. 12. Return. The first line of 23 is read with a slight variation in the Bengal text. The words "nothing could be seen save drones' arrows" are added here to make the sense clear. 13. Return. Probably a ready instrument. 14. Return. The sense seems to be that having carefully attained Arjuna in arms, he has got the fruit of his care and labour in the form of defeat and death at the hands of, or, at least, through, his own pupil. 15. Return. This sentence comprises 7, 8, and the first line of 9. I have followed the exact order of the original. The peculiarity of the Sanskrit construction is that the nominative pronoun is made to stand in opposition with a noun in the objective case. The whole of this section contains many such sentences. 16. Return. 10 and 11 also refer to Ajatasattu. 17. Return. Ghatotkacha was the son of Hidimva by Bhimasena. Rakshasi women bring forth the very day they conceive, and their offspring attain to youth the very day they are born. 18. Return. Hyara, lit. The Prince of Steeds. He was an Asura, otherwise called Kesi, in the form of a steed. 19. Return. That is, without weapons of any kind. 20. Return. Kaliprasanna Singer, in his Bengali translation, makes a mess of this sloka. 21. Return. Jarasandha, the powerful king of the Magadhas, and the sworn foe of Krishna, was slain by Bhima through Krishna's instigation. 22. Return. Viz. The transplantation of the Parijata from Amaravati to the earth. 23. Return. Though gods, they have taken their births as men, and they must achieve their objects by human means. It is for this that they do not, by a fiat only of their will, destroy this host. 24. Return. The Bengal texts read this verse incorrectly. For Prataptam, the correct reading is Satatam, and for Anukarinas, the correct word is Asukarinas. 25. Return. The Bengal reading is Zoravayala. The Bombay texts read Sulafiala. I adopt the latter. Vaginas, in Prani Vagina Shivatam, is explained by Nilakantha to mean fowl or bird. 26. Return. It is evident that the very minuteness with which the comparison is sought to be sustained destroys the effect. Regarding the repetition, they are just such as one may expect to find in verses composed extempore. 27. Return. This verse is read incorrectly in the Bengal texts. Ohayan read Danas. 28. Return. The word heroic occurs in the next verse. 29. Return. The word in the original are Sampata, Abhigata, and Nipata. 30. Return. Nishka, literally, a golden coin, whose weight is diversely stated by diverse authorities. 31. Return. I adopt the Bengal reading, which is Vayavam. The Bombay reading is Vihayanam, meaning leaving Yadishthira. 32. Return. Soldiers sworn to conquer or die. Instead of using a long-winded phrase each time the word occurs, it is better to repeat it in this form. 33. Return. The second line reads differently in the Bombay text. 34. Return. It seems that the text here is vicious. It certainly requires settling. One complete sloka seems to be wanting. 35. Return. The second line of this verse is certainly vicious. 36. Return. Akachas is explained by Nilakantha as unable to bear the sight of others of their species, that is, walking by themselves, or solitarily or singly. Some of the vernacular translators are for taking this word as implying the rhinoceros. 37. Return. Literally, thought in his mind that his hour was come. 38. Return. Literally, half moon-shaped. 39. Return. Cruel because it was a Brahmana with whom Satanika was fighting. 40. Return. The Bengal reading Vayupalava is a mistake. The correct reading is Vayupanaga as in the Bombay text. 41. Return. Using even these as implements for striking, for Bhima's might was superhuman. 42. Return. Hemadanda is a mistake of the Bengal texts for Hemapanis. 43. Return. The first line of 20 is vicious as it occurs in the Bengal texts. The Bombay reading is correct. 44. Return. This seems to be a repetition of the 6th verse. 45. Return. That is, not to abandon their comrades in distress. 46. Return. The last word of the first line of 74 is vicious as printed in the Bengal texts. 47. Return. The custom, when one warrior attacked another, was invariably to give his name and lineage before striking. 48. Return. All the printed texts, not excepting that of Bombay, read Drupadas. There can be no doubt, however, that it should be Drapadas. 49. Return. The first line of 54 is read incorrectly in the Bengal texts. I follow the Bombay reading. 50. Return. After 19 occurs a complete sloka in the Bombay text which does not appear to be genuine. 51. Return. The second line of the 46 is omitted in the Bengal texts. 52. Return. The Bengali translators have made a mess of these two verses. Among others, K. P. Singer makes Ruchi Pavan follow Bhima and suppose Shuvakos to be some Pandava warrior who slew Ruchi Pavan. The reading Shuvakas is vicious. The correct reading is Supava, meaning, as Nilakanthu explains, of beautiful limbs. Pavitapati is Bhagadatta himself. 53. Return. The Bengal reading abatis is incorrect. It should be Kshubatis. 54. Return. I render 16 and 17 rather freely, as otherwise the sense would not be clear. 55. Return. The Bengal texts read, he is either the first or the second, on the earth, I think. 56. Return. The Bombay reading Paritas is vicious. The Bengal texts read Twaritas. 57. Return. The Bengal texts read the second line differently. Lokam, accusative. For Garmamkubi the Bengal reading is Garmamvubi. Nilakanthu explains that Vasha, whence Vashika, means season. Hence Negadavashikang Masau would mean the 2 months of summer. If the Bengal reading were adopted, the meaning would be like summer and the rainy seasons afflicting the world with sweat and rain. 58. Return. The Bengal reading Samprapt is vicious. The Bombay reading Sambranti is evidently correct. 59. Return. I render 5 a little freely and expand it slightly to make the sense clear. 60. Return. The Bengal reading Purvabilasi is better than Purvabilbasi. Between Neela and Swathaman existed a rivalry since some time. 61. Return. The word in the original is Tumakitu. Elsewhere I have rendered it comet. It would seem, however, that is wrong. In such passages the word is used in its literal sense, viz., an article, having smoke for its mark, hence fire. 62. Return. The first half of the first line of 21 seems to be grammatically connected with 20. 63. Return. The last half of the second line of the 4 is vicious as occurring in the Bengal texts. The correct reading is a Udu Havayarada. 64. Return. Jangas, etc., are diverse limbs of cars used in battle. 65. Return. The second half of the second line of 2 is vicious in the Bengal texts. 66. Return. I omit the names as they occur in the text. These are 1. Kshatrupras, that is, arrows sharp as razors. 2. Vatsidantas, that is, arrows having heads like the calf tooth. 3. Vipatas, that is, long arrows having stout bodies. 4. Narakas, long arrows. Adhakandrabhayas, that is, looking like shafts furnished with heads of the form of the half-moon. It is an adjective qualifying narachas. 5. Angelikas were broad-headed shafts. 67. Return. There are the names of diverse kinds of drums, small and large. 68. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading of the first line of 4. 69. Return. The fruit being the present encounter with Abhimanyu, in which Dusyasna, according to Abhimanyu, shall have to lay down his life. 70. Return. Pravandaiva is explained by Nilakantha as Nimnadim Prapya. The meaning seems to be, as I have put it, like an elephant in a low land, that is, land covered with mud and water. 71. Return. These words occur in 17 lower down. 72. Return. These are limbs of cars. 73. Return. The Bombay reading is slightly different. 74. Return. Literally, like another son of the Lord of Treasure. 75. Return. I confess I do not understand what the meaning is of Asaiva Vakavsrijatam. The rendering I offer is tentative. 76. Return. I follow the numbering of the Bengal texts. 23 consists of 3 lines. 77. Return. I expand the 5th a little to make the sense clear. 78. Return. I expand the 5th a little to make the sense clear. 79. Return. In the first fine of 3, the correct reading is Kananchapiakarit Krada, etc. The reading in the Bengal text is vicious and unmeaning. 80. Return. Bengal text read Tharutarangani, that is, Dretops. 81. Return. The correct reading is Mahavalan Mahavalat. 82. Return. The Bombay reading which I accept is Valabudiska. Of course Bengal reading is Avalabudiska. 83. Return. During the days of mourning a person is regarded as unclean, being unable to perform his ordinary worship and other religious rites. After the obsequies are performed, the mourning is ended. He is supposed to be cleansed. 84. Return. The first line of 6 is read differently in the Bombay edition. The Bengal reading, however, seems to me to be preferable. 85. Return. Both the Bengal and Bombay editions, in the first line of 12, read prita, that is, gratified. There can be no doubt, however, that the correct reading is beta, that is, affrighted, as I have put it. I find that some of the Bengali translators have also made this correction. 86. Return. Devas, in the first line of 46, means the senses. Vritas, as explained by Nilakantha, means Vritivntas. 87. Return. Verse 55, as occurring in both the Bengal and the Bombay text, requires corrections. 55 is incomplete. For the words Tada Raja, therefore, I read So Kamtaya, as suggested by Gay P. Singer. Then the Visaga after Yiddish theorem must be dropped to make it evocative. Similarly, Pandavas in 58 should be Pandava, evocative and not a nominative. Apakramat should be Apakrama. The last 2 corrections are made in the Bombay text. The fact is, are 55 to 58 the words of Vyasa or of Sanjaya. Evidently, it is Vyasa that speaks, and hence the necessity of the corrections noted. 88. Return. I follow Nilakantha in rendering these 2 verses. 89. Return. Of golden excreta. 90. Return. The Bengal reading is Samvatam. The Bombay text makes Samvata a nominative. I have adopted the Bengal reading. If the Bombay reading be accepted, the meaning would be that Samvata himself, speaked with the Vrihas party, caused Maratha to perform sacrifice. K.P. Singer makes a ludicrous blunder in supposing Samvata to have been a kind of sacrifice. 91. Return. The word in the original Atavika, literally meaning one dwelling in the woods. It is very generally used in the sense of thieves or robbers, thus showing that these predators from the earliest times had the woods and the forests for their home. 92. Return. The Hineous rivers. Swearineous, open to everybody. The Bengal reading is Abhavan, the Bombay reading Vyatagan. If the former reading be adopted, it would mean the rivers were of liquid gold. 93. Return. That is, sacrifices ordained for Kshatriyas. 94. Return. Seksha, one of the 6 branches of Vedas, it may be called the orthoepy of the Vedas. Akshara, letters of the alphabet. The sense seems to be that these Brahmanas were good readers of the Vedas. 95. Return. The word in the original Murdabhishikta, which literally means one whose coronal locks have undergone the ceremony of the sacred investiture. Hence, it is used to denote Kshatriyas or persons of the royal order. 96. Return. Havishamadamavahat, or Havishamudamavahat, which would mean, he poured libations unto Indra as copious as water. 97. Return. Because juniors predeceased their seniors. The causative form of akaran is a license. 98. Return. The 4 kinds of creatures that own Rama's sway were, 1. Those that were oviparous, 2. Those that were viviparous, 3. Those born of filth, and 4. The vegetables. 99. Return. These were goods for facilitating access to the sacred stream. 100. Return. Both 5 and 6 are difficult slokas, but for Nilakantha I could never have understood their sense. The reading Jalafna, occurring in both the Bengal and the Bombay editions, is a mistake for Janona. The construction of 5 is this: Dakshina Bhuyasaddat, Taina Hachuna Janona Akaranta. The story of the salvation of Bhagirata's ancestors is a beautiful myth. King Sagara, when Sagara or the ocean, had 60,000 sons. They were all reduced to ashes by the curse of the sage Kapila, an incarnation of Vishnu himself. Bhagirata, a remote descendant, caused the sacred Ganga to roll over the spot where the ashes of his ancestors lay, and thus procured their salvation. 101. Return. The correct reading is Valgavadinas, and not the form in the genitive plural. 102. Return. In the Bombay edition, some verses occur after the 3rd. 103. Return. Literally having me for his sustainer. 104. Return. Instead of Suna, the Bombay text gives Peru. 105. Return. The Bengal text reads this verse differently. 106. Return. The words in italics are names of Indian confectionery, prepared with wheat or barley, milk, and sugar or honey. 107. Return. These are the methods by which he sought knowledge of the Vedas. 108. Return. Nakshatra Dakshina is explained by Nilakantha as Nakshatra Vyatro Dakshina. 109. Return. The Bengal reading of the 2nd line of the 2nd verse is vicious. At any rate, the Bombay reading is better. 110. Return. Animals slain in sacrifices are believed to go to heaven. 111. Return. Identified with the modern chambal. 112. Return. A kind of vessel used by Brahmanas and others for begging. 113. Return. Baswikzar means made of gold. It is a feminine adjective. The substantive is omitted. I think the passage may mean, the city of Rantdidavu is made of gold. 114. Return. A vyama is the space between the two arms extended at their furthest. 115. Return. Literally, a kshatriya is one that rescues another from wounds and injuries. 116. Return. A raja is one who enjoys the affection of his people, and with whom they are delighted. 117. Return. The bow of Shiva, otherwise called Pinaka. 118. Return. Aklishtakarman, literally, one who is never fatigued with work, hence one capable of obtaining the results of action by a mere fiat of the will. It may also mean, of unspotted acts. 119. Return. Pathivas, that is, relating to the earth. 120. Return. The first line of the verse, I think, has been correctly explained by Nilakantha. The paraphrase is Yamam bimim sukam kavn adium, that is adium yagamenu parity sma. 121. Return. The Bombay text adds some verses here which do not occur in the Bengal texts. 122. Return. K. P. Sign makes a ludicrous blunder in reading this line. 123. Return. Sanakikas, that is, clad in mail. 124. Return. The Bengal reading Dwijatam is certainly better than the Bombay reading Dwijatam, although Nilakantha explains Uchitam as Abhamatam. 125. Return. Twilight is herself the goddess who is supposed to be adored by certain prayers and on the occasion. 126. Return. These slaps mark the cadences. 127. Return. Literally, in crossing. 128. Return. The Bengal reading Satyavarataif in the first line of 9 is vicious. I adopt the Bombay reading Satyaratas, qualifying Tara, to suppose that Krishna paid such a compliment to the Kauravas as is implied by the Bengal reading is an absurdity. 129. Return. That is added his voice to that of Jayadratha, requesting Drona to protect the latter. 130. Return. A kind of car or vehicle. 131. Return. Nilakantha supposes that Tasmai here refers to the three-eyed and not to Krishna. This seems to be right. 132. Return. The second note of the Hindu gamut. 133. Return. Vasavameva is a mistake for Vasavasyava. 134. Return. Apavritam is explained by Nilakantha as endangered or made doubtful. What Sanjaya says is that if it is not so, thou shalt then have to undergo the bitterness of ruling over the whole world bestowed upon thee by the Pandavas. Either the Pandavas will snatch away thy kingdom or make thee ruler of the whole after slaying thy sons. Either of these alternatives would be bitter to thee. 135. Return. The original is pleonastic. 136. Return. This verse obviously needs correction. Instead of golden coats of mail, I think some such correction is needed, viz. Coats of mail, of black iron, decked with gold and dyed with blood, etc. 137. Return. The original is pleonastic. 138. Return. This sloka occurs in all the texts. It would seem, therefore, that Sanjaya was not always a witness only of the battle for narrating what he saw to Dhritarashtra, but sometimes at least he took part in the battle. 139. Return. The words Daksainyapaya Pujayan seem to be unmeaning in this connection. The Bengali translators, unable to do anything with them, have left them out. 140. Return. The celestial weapons were forces dependent on mantras. Ordinary shafts, inspired with these mantras, were converted into celestial weapons. 141. Return. In other words, Arjuna's car shot as quickly through the enemy as the arrows themselves sped from it. 142. Return. The Bengal reading of the first line is vicious. The Bombay reading is Vimakam Vibatham, Vanan. The first word means the froth in the mouth of the steeds. 143. Return, that is, his funeral obsequies. The vernacular translators do not see the intended joke. 144. Return. I give the sense of this verse, without giving a closely literal version. 145. Return. Avabritha is the final bath undergone, on completion of as sacrifice by the person performing the sacrifice. The slaughter of Duryodhana would, according to Krishna, be the avabritha of the sacrifice of battle. 146. Return. Pravidam means fallen down or loosened from its usual place. Thus Nilakantha. 147. Return. Tripura means the three cities constructed by the Asura artificer Maya. The Asura, however, who owned those cities is also called Tripura. It was Mahadeva who destroyed the three cities with all their population via the close of the Harivansa. 148. Return. The true reading is Alohita and not Lohita. Arka here is crystal and not the sun. It was a sylvan boar, which could not, evidently, be like the sun. 149. Return. Owners of golden cars. 150. Return. Needers were niches or drivers' boxes. 151. Return. Many of the opening slokas of this section are nearly the same as those of section 76 of Bhishma Parva, Vidyanti. In a few instances I have adopted the readings of the Bombay edition. 152. Return. I prefer the reading Samakalam to Jashakilam. 153. Return. That is, using cars and elephants as weapons for destroying cars and elephants. 154. Return. The fear behind them was from the Pandava army. The fear before them was from the Ka warriors who had succeeded in penetrating the Kuru host. 155. Return. Many of the Bengal texts have Kalabhariva. This is a mistake, the word being Kalada, and not Kalapa, which would be in meaning here. 156. Return. I render the second line of the 4-2 freely. The sense seems to be that when two persons fight, one cannot say beforehand who will succeed. Both have chances of success, as, indeed, both have chances of defeat. 157. Return. The genius of the two languages being entirely different, I give the sense of the first line of 14 separately, without seeking to connect it, in the assertive form, with the second half of 13. 158. Return. Literally, disregard of Krishna. 159. Return. The Bombay reading, which I adopt, seems to be better than the Bengal one. 160. Return. I think that both Vrikadaram and Nisitais in this verse as given in the Bombay text are incorrect. I read Vrikadaras and Navavis following the Bengal texts. 161. Return. The sense seems to be that Kana and Bhima were like fire and wind. 162. Return. Verse 28 is a triplet. The second line is obscure. It seems that a line has been omitted. 163. Return. Literally, mustered all his rage. 164. Return. In the first line of the 62, the Bengal reading Aastam is better than the Bombay reading Aastas. 165. Return. Literally, a mountain overgrown with medicinal herbs of great efficacy. Of course, the allusion is to Hanumat's removal of Gandhamadana for the cure of Lakshmana. 166. Return. That is, the little indent caused by a cow's hoof. 167. Return. The sense is that he that will slay me will always be victorious in battle, will always slay their warriors with whom he may be engaged in battle. Defeat will never be his. 168. Return. Do not render 55 literally. Satyaki is called Satyavikrama, that is, of true prowess or of prowess incapable of being baffled. If he sustains a defeat today at a Riserva's hand, that title of his will be falsified. This is all that Krishna means. 169. Return. Verse 20 is incomplete. I supply the words, why then should I not protect in order to make the meaning intelligible? The first line of 21 is grammatically connected with 20, to avoid an ugly construction I render it separately. 170. Return. Literally, who could witness with indifference Satyaki reduced to that plight? 171. Return. Generally, to die, abstaining from all food. It is a method of freeing the soul from the body by yoga. 172. Return. Literally, near the place assigned for the sacrificial butter. 173. Return. Nilakanthu explains Chakram as Pratipam. 174. Return. The second line of 94 I render a little freely to make the sense clearer. 175. Return. A kavanda is a headless trunk moving about as if endued with life. Tales are told of these headless beings drinking the blood of victims falling within their grasp. 176. Return. The second of the 7 notes of the Hindu gamut. 177. Return. The printed editions and the manuscripts do not agree with one another in respect of the order and numbering of the last dozen verses. The Bombay edition omits a few of the verses. 178. Return. Everything, even the inanimate creation, exists and adores the supreme deity. 179. Return. This is a triplet in the Calcutta edition. 180. Return. Literally, the fact of the Dharashtras having sunk into distress. 181. Return. Literally, of persons whose coronal locks have undergone the sacred bath. 182. Return. Pralavdas is explained by Nilakantha differently. He supposes that Duryodhana here characterizes Sikandin to be a deceitful fowler or hunter in consequence of the deceit with which he caused Bhishma's fall. This is far-fetched. 183. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading. 184. Return. The Bombay edition reads this verse differently and introduces another after it which does not occur in the Bengal texts. 185. Return. I am not sure whether I have rendered the 31st and the first half of 32nd correctly. The vernacular translators have made a mess of the passage. The difficulty lies with Sahityamayas. I take it to mean that Duryodhana says, Karna, Sakuni, Disasna, with myself, had taken thee, O preceptor, for a friend, and had engaged thee in this battle. We did not, however, then know that thou art an enemy in disguise. 186. Return. That is, he should, by every means in his power, avenge himself on the Sommikas, those enemies of mine. 187. Return. This is a triplet in the Bengal texts. 188. Return. I render the second line freely, following Nilakantha. 189. Return. Literally, with shafts resembling his rays. 190. Return. Or, as a lake overgrown with lotuses is agitated on every side by an elephant. 191. Return. 16 lines, occurring after this in the Bombay edition, have been omitted in the Calcutta edition. 192. Return. Drums of diverse kinds and sizes. 193. Return. The Bombay reading is Apalavam, not Viplatam. 194. Return. This is a triplet in all the editions. 195. Return. The brother of the Kalinga prince. 196. Return. Patan Ipam is explained by Nilakantha as something that causes the patana or downfall of a person, hence sin. There is no reference for this note in the body of this page, so I have placed it in a likely location. JBH. 197. Return. A nalwa measured 400 cubits. 198. Return. Nilakantha explains that there were Pisachas. 199. Return. As Wataman and the Pandavas were like brothers, for both were disciples of Drona. Gatotkacha, therefore, having been Bhima's son, was as Wataman's brother's son. 200. Return. That is, the weapon endues with the force of the thunder. 201. Return. Different species of Rakshasas. 202. Return. Tripura, belonging to an Asura of the same. 203. Return. Asani literally means the thunder. Probably, some kind of iron mace. 204. Return. The Bengal texts read Utgrisha Vikramas. The correct reading seems to be Aklivta Vikramas. Then again Sahanajam seems to be inaccurate. I follow the Bombay reading Sahanagam. 205. Return. Ukayuta, when used as a proper noun, refers to Krishna. It means of unfading glory and the immortal. 206. Return. Slight differences are observable between the Bengal and the Bombay texts as regards the last 3 verses. 207. Return. This is a triplet. 208. Return. This is a triplet. 209. Return. In the second line of the 4, Atsida and not Udvrita is the true reading. So also Kanshit and not Kinshit. The paraphrase, according to Nilakantha, in Kanshit Danataram Naganayan, etc. 210. Return. 147 is a triplet. 211. Return. The Bengal reading Sudakshinas at the end of 49 does not seem to be correct. I adopt the Bombay reading pseudonym. 212. Return. The Bombay edition reads the first line of 3 differently. The Bengal reading is also defective. The correct reading seems to be Rathanaga instead of Narinaga. 213. Return. This is a triplet. 214. Return. Instead of Matagay, the Bombay edition reads Datragay. 215. Return. There seems to be a mistake in this sloka in its reference to the Pandavas. The reading, however, that occurs in all the printed edition, is the same. In one manuscript I find Kamravayada Virgais, which I adopt, for Pandava Kauravais. 216. Return. The second line of 30, as it occurs in the Bengal texts, is adopted by me. A slight difference of reading occurs between the Bengal and the Bombay editions. 217. Return. As regards almost every one of these slokas, differences of reading are observable between the Bengal texts and the Bombay edition. The readings of the Bombay edition are almost uniformly better. Then, again, many of those verses are disfigured with syntactical pleonasms and other grave errors, abounding with tiresome repetitions that scarcely attract notice amid the variety of synonyms with which the language of the original abounds, and amid also the melodious flow of the rhythm. The defects become glaring in translation. At the latter, however, of faithfulness, I have been obliged to sacrifice elegance in rendering this section. 218. Return. The Bengal reading Taithaloka is incorrect. The Bombay text correctly reads Dadloka. Then also, instead of the Bengal reading Rajasakasame of right, which is faulty, the true reading is Raja Damas of right. 219. Return. Lokanamabhav is explained by Nilakantha as Pralayagale. 220. Return. A different reading occurs in the Bombay edition. 221. Return. Nalikas, as used here, appear to have been some species of shafts. In an earlier note, relying on other authorities, I took it to mean some kind of a gun. 222. Return. Vayakatana may also mean one who has peeled off his skin of natural armor. To preserve dramatic propriety, the Hindu commentators explain it in this sense when it occurs in any such passage, for the real origin of Karna, viz., his procreation by the deity of the sun, became known after his death. 223. Return. The second line of 9 is read differently in the Calcutta edition. I adopt the Bombay reading. 224. Return. In the second line of 13, Avi Ayatanam instead of Maharaja is the correct reading. 225. Return. This sloka seems to be a vicious one. 226. Return. Yena and Tana here are equal to Yatra and Tatra. 227. Return. In the first line of 30 Vaganas are not Vanaganan is the true reading. 228. Return. The second line of 30 is read differently in the Calcutta edition. In consequence also of some differences between two printed editions, 30 of the Calcutta text is 32 of the Bombay text. 229. Return. In the Bengal texts this is a triplet. 230. Return. It is for this that I see thee with this head as a tribute. 231. Return. An Irani is a cubit measuring from the elbow to the end of the little figure. 232. Return. Both reading, viz., asaktam and asaktam are correct. The former means engaged, the latter, to the measure of his might. 233. Return. The second line of 85 is differently in the Bombay edition. 234. Return. Rakshasas at certain hours were believed to be inspired with greater strength. 235. Return. Menaka the son of Himavat has 100 heads. 236. Return. That is, they thought they obtained a new lease of life. 237. Return. Literally means, united by Jara. 238. Return. Nilakantha thinks that Sangadaya in one word, meaning deprived of the both Rakshasas and the mace. This is far-fetched. 239. Return. Fire being the mouth of the celestials, without fire, the celestials become mouthless. Thus Nilakantha. 240. Return. This is a triplet in the Bengal texts. 241. Return. 66 is a triplet in the Bengal texts. 242. Return. Triyama, literally, consisting of 3 yamas, a yama being a watch of 3 hours. The first hour and a half of the night and the last hour and a half being regarded as twilight. The night, truly as such, with the ancient Hindus, consisted of only 9 hours. 243. Return. Literally, of 1,000 yamas. 244. Return. The moon is called the Lord of Lilies because the water lily is seen to bloom at moonrise, just as the sun is called the Lord of the Lotuses because the lotus blooms at sunrise. The direction presided over by Indra means the east. 245. Return. Dasardakashakupa means the Kakap or direction presided by him of 1,000 eyes, hence the east. 246. Return. Instead of Vaishodhara, the Bombay text reads Vaishottama, which I adopt. 247. Return. In the first line of 31, the Bengal texts read Rajanam, probably referring to Drupada. The correct reading, however, is Rujendra in the vocative case as in the Bombay edition. 248. Return. I render this a little too freely. The form of the oath is, let that man lose, etc., whom Drona escapes today with life for whom Drona vanquishes today. 249. Return. This, in the Bengal texts, is a triplet. 250. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading of the first line of this verse. 251. Return. All these arrows inflicted had wounds and could not be easily extracted. Shafts of crooked courses were condemned because the combatants could not easily baffle them, not knowing at whom they would fall. 252. Return. This verse is omitted in the Bombay text. There can be no doubt, however, about its genuineness. 253. Return. The celestial weapons were all living agents that appeared at the bidding of him who knew to invoke them. They abandoned, however, the person whose death was imminent, although invoked with usual formulae. 254. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading. 255. Return. Deprived of both the worlds, having sustained a defeat, they lost this world, and flying away from the field, they committed a sin and lost the next world. 256. Return. Celestial weapons were invoked with mantras, as explained in a previous note. They were forces which created all sorts of tangible weapons that the invoked desired. Here the Brahma weapon took the form of broad-headed arrows. 257. Return. Dharmadvajan literally means a person bearing the standard of virtue, hence, hypocrite, sanctimoniously talking only virtue and morality but acting differently. 258. Return. I think the correct reading is Apitrinas and not Putrinas. If it is Putrinas, literally rendered, the meaning is, why should persons having children feel any affection for the latter? It is worthy of remark that the author of Venice Amara has bodily adopted this verse, putting it in the mouth of his Wataman when introduced in the third act. 259. Return. The last line of 37 is read differently in the Bombay edition. Nilakanthu accepts that reading, and explains it in his gloss, remarking that the grammatical solecism occurring in it is a license. The Bengal reading, however, is more apposite. 260. Return. Literally, the animals kept the Pandavas to the right. 261. Return. Dasaratha's son Rama, during his exile, slew the monkey chief Bali, the brother of Sugriva, while Bali was engaged with Sugriva in battle. Bali had not done any injury to Rama. That act has always been regarded as a stain on Rama. 262. Return. I expand the original to make the sense clear. 263. return. The first line of the 23rd verse in the Bengal editions is made the second line of that verse in the Bombay text. There seems to be a mistake, however, in both the texts. Vishnu slew Hiranyakasipu without allowing the latter to say anything unto him. Vidi Vishnuprana. If instead of Hiranyakasipu Harim, the rendering be Hiranyakasipu Haris, the line may then be connected with Bhima's speech, and the comparison would become more apposite. 264. Return. The Nishadas were and to this day are the lowest caste in India. 265. Return. The Bengal reading is vicious. I adopt the Bombay reading, which is Surugaran Shobu Opi, meaning, this preceptor again. The fact is, Arjuna was Satyaki's preceptor, Drona, therefore, was the latter's preceptor's preceptor. 266. Return. Kimpurashas were fabled creatures, half men and steeds. Not a mountain but had its Kimpurashas, according to the Hindu belief. Yakshas were a sort of superhuman beings inhabiting inaccessible hills and mountains. 267. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading of the second line of 35 and think that Nilakanthu explains it correctly. 268. Return. I adopt the Bombay reading. 269. Return. Nilakanthu explains this to mean that when he became unconnected with the world, raising superior to everything connected with the world. 270. Return. The terrible. 271. Return. Amritasya Yonim, literally, the origin or cause of immortality, that is, he from whom immortality springs. Hence, as explained by Nilakantha, the phrase means the source of salvation, for those only that are emancipate became immortal as the Supreme Soul itself. 272. Return. That is, the 5 attributes perceivable by the 5 senses, with the 5 objects of nature with which they are directly connected or in which they manifest themselves. 273. Return. Having given it away to Rama, his disciple. 274. Return. All these terms imply death or the destroyer.